Welcome to Why Should I Hire You? Introduction to Interviewing. I'm Patty Woods. I'm a career advisor in the Lazarus Center for Career Development, and I'm thrilled to be here with my colleague, Kate Traskis from the Employer Relations team in the Lazarus Center. Hi, Kate.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
Great. Thank you for being here. And today, Kate and I are thrilled to be talking to you about the topic of interviewing. Okay, so here are our learning objectives for today. We want to learn a little bit about what employers look for during an interview. I know a lot of students have said, why do I have to have an interview? They see my resume, they see I have the skills, they read my cover letter, they know I'm interested in this position. So, and I think a lot of it has to do with nerves too. Why do I need to go through this interview? So we're going to learn a little bit about what employers are really seeking in the interview. We're also going to talk about the types of interview questions to expect for the job you're applying for the industry. No, you do not need to have responses to every single interview question out there. That's not the goal. And then, of course, how to prepare and do your thinking in advance of the interview so that once you get to the interview, you can do the responding. So I'd love to engage all of you right away and hear your guess in the chat. How many minutes do you think it takes for an employer to decide in an interview if you are a good fit for the position? Okay, so I'm seeing 5 minutes, 1 minute, 15, 2, 3, 5. Nearly 49% of employers know within the first 5 minutes. So I know a lot of you guessed 5, and this is according to a survey by Career Builder that says that 49% of employers will know within the first 5 minutes of an interview if you're a good fit. So I'm curious to hear from you. What do you think this means for you as an interviewee? What does this mean? And so what I would love to do is just have you literally wave to me on your screen, and I will call upon you to take yourself off of mute and share what you think. What are your thoughts on this? What does this mean for you if you're going to interview in the first 5 minutes? Okay, great. Sophie, would you like to take yourself off of mute and share?
Sure. My sense is that they get probably most of the information that they need from your resume and cover letter, assuming that you have to submit both of those. But usually your interpersonal skills are important for any job. So I think I'm imagining that that's a large part of what they're looking at.
I love this. And that's absolutely accurate. Your interpersonal skills, 100%. And those nonverbal professional skills that you have. So when you think of nonverbal, right, it's a smile, it's professional dress. Even if these days we're not going in for an interview most of the time over Skype or Zoom, to be wearing something, an outfit that's appropriate for the industry that you're applying to, right? Actively listening, making eye contact through the camera as much as possible. These things are super important right off the bat before they even get into the content of your skills and knowledge and interest. And because you have such limited time to make a great first impression in an interview, given that a lot of interviews could be only 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, you really want to know the purpose of an interview so you can make the most of that limited time you have with the employer. Okay, so let's get something right out of the way. It's very normal to feel nervous, but an invitation to interview, to come into an employer's company or to have an online virtual interview is not supposed to be in any way a cross-examination. It's normal to feel nervous and a little anxious, but we want to turn those nerves into positive energy, excitement, and curiosity. And when you think about it, the employer really wants you to do well, right? They want to have this interview process over with. They want to hire you and get you in there so that they can start working with you and so that you can add value to the team. So if you start to think about it more as a conversation between you and the employer about your interest, and less so about some sort of interrogation or quiz or exam that you're going to fail, think that change in mindset, that shift in the mindset will help a lot. Often the best prepared candidate will get the position over the most qualified candidate. So prepping in advance, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit about today, will be helpful too. So modalities. So a lot of times, especially today, your interview might not be in person any longer. It could be, for sure, it could be in person, but it could also be over Zoom, over GoToMeeting. There are often pre-recorded interviews that you'll do through, I don't know if any of you have heard of HireVue before, where you do a pre-recorded interview and send it in. But regardless of the modality of your interview, these are going to be some of the best tips to stand out in any form of an interview. So the first one is ways to stand out in your interview. The first thing you want to do is highlight your strengths, accomplishments, and qualifications. And I say this because, and you're thinking, of course I'll do that. But a lot of times I'll hear students in practice interviews say something along the lines of, although I don't have that experience in X, Y, and Z, or I don't exactly have this skill set or this class, so you're already leading from a place of not having what the employer is looking for. So just leave that out completely and do talk about what you bring to the table. So a strengths-based approach. Then you're going to convey how you add value. Perhaps you speak another language, or you have a certain computer skill in addition to the job description that you want to bring up. And that could be a huge plus for any employer. Not only do you have the qualifications, but then you also have this other thing that they don't already have on their team. You are going to learn your fit within the organization's culture. So the more research you can do on the team or organization that you're interviewing with, the more you can learn a little bit more about what that team needs and how you can bring more of that to that team. And then last but not least, asking thoughtful questions, so that at the end of the interview, when the employer says, oh, so those are all our questions that we have for you, what are your questions for us? And you don't have any, and then they're going to feel bad, and they're not going to think that you're all that interested, right? So if you have some thoughtful questions, it really shows that you're serious about the potential of working for them. All right, so this is a very important slide, and I encourage you to take a screenshot or take a picture with your cell phone, because employers are going to ask a variety of all different types of interview questions that unfortunately we won't know in advance, and I know that's where some of the nervous anxiety comes into play. Any of the questions that the employer is going to ask you is all in order to get to know the answers to these key themes. Okay, so it's, can you do the job? Do you have the skills? Do you have the experience to do this job? And so they're going to ask you questions around the job description. And you can predict those questions just by reading over the job description. Then why do you want the job? Are you just applying because it's almost graduation time and I need to do something, I need a paycheck, and it was posted on such and such database, so I guess I'm going to apply? They want to know that you genuinely are interested in this job, and it's more than just a job that was posted. Are you a good fit? Are we going to enjoy each other's company, essentially? A lot of times this has to do with the mission of the organization. Are we going to jive well together? Do we believe in some of the same goals of the larger organization or industry? And then last but not least, why shouldn't we hire you? Are there any risks that we should know about? And so if there's anything on your resume that you think they might ask you about that you want to clear out of the way, you could bring that up in an interview or leave it alone, but be prepared to answer it should they ask you. All right, so interview questions can be categorized into these common labels. Depending on the industry that you're applying for, you may only be asked interview questions in the traditional and behavioral categories. Oftentimes, the hypothetical, situational, or technical interview questions are in consulting or finance roles or engineering roles, but almost everyone, I would say, should be prepared to answer some traditional and behavioral questions. So these are the common types. And let's start with traditional. Traditional questions really focus on getting to know you and your background. These questions, like I said, anyone and everyone should be expected to receive, so you can absolutely prepare these in advance. We actually have a short video on our website for how to answer the "tell me about yourself" question, which is often the most where people feel the most stumped. And that could be anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes, where you talk a little bit about who you are now. Typically, that's your current student studying a certain subject matter. You might talk a little bit about a past club or experience or leadership activity that's honed the skills that you're looking to apply to said job or internship. And then you talk a little bit about your interest in that company that you're applying to. So we call that the present, past, future formula that often can be helpful to help answer that question. Then we, often the employer will want to know, why do you want this position? Are you genuinely interested in working here? The commonly asked question, tell me a few of your greatest strengths. And we would encourage you to really streamline these towards strengths that you believe the employer will want to know about. And having some examples in your pocket ready to talk about in regards to those strengths are super helpful. If they say, oh, organization, that's one of your top strengths, wonderful. That's something that we're looking for in this job. Tell me about an example when you use that organization skill. So be prepared to not just name the strength or the skill, but how you implemented that. And then another somewhat challenging question is weakness. And a weakness should really be a genuine weakness. You want to steer clear of the cliche answer of, oh, I'm a perfectionist, I work too hard, right? You know, this is really an opportunity for you to show that you've done some reflection, that you're self-aware, that you do have some weaknesses, but what you're doing to improve upon those. And we talked about this in yesterday's workshop on interviewing, but a weakness that you give to an employer should be one that's not directly in line with the position you're applying to. So, for example, if public speaking is part of the job description and you have a hard time with public speaking, you wouldn't want to give that as one of your weaknesses, even if you are talking about what you're doing to improve upon it. If it's one of the core requirements of the job description, we'd encourage you to think about perhaps another weakness. I would love to hear from someone out there who's either gone through an interview process in the past and has been asked, tell me about your weakness, one of your weaknesses, and how you went about answering it, or someone who wants to kind of talk about a weakness that they want to share and ask the group for feedback on it. So I'm going to scroll through and see if I see anyone waving your hands, and then I'll invite you to take yourself off of mute to share with us. As you're thinking about waving to me, I would love to hear from someone. One of my weaknesses.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Kate.
I'm like, I can share one, Patty.
Yeah, that would be great.
So one that I think is, you know, when you're thinking about offering a weakness, I know we're always thinking, well, but how do we spin that right into kind of a positive? So I might share something around time management, right? So sometimes when I'm working, like I can get so wrapped up in everything that I'm doing, I might lose track of time. And so in order to work with that, I've developed a system for myself where I set alarms, you know, so that I know I'm working on something for a certain amount of time. I have a start and an end time. I might set an agenda of tasks for the day. So something that demonstrates that you recognize the weakness and then how you're working towards addressing it.
That's super helpful. I love that example. And we also do practice interviews one-on-one, and you can schedule an appointment in Handshake to meet with an advisor to talk about these. The next type of interview question is the behavioral interview questions. And behavioral questions ask for specific examples that demonstrate skills or qualities. And typically these questions are about your past behaviors, so that the employer can see how your past behavior will predict future behavior. So how did you handle X, Y, and Z in the past? They want to hear a little bit about that so that they know if they hire you for their team or at their organization, this will demonstrate how you'll behave working with them. So a lot of times examples, you can almost always predict a behavioral question about a team situation. So a time when you worked in a team, just in general, the question could be, tell me about a time when you worked in a team, or tell me about a time when you took the lead in a team and what that looked like. It could also be a question that asks, tell me about a time when you thought outside of the box. So maybe an employer that you're applying to, a Google or an IDEO, or a company that really values creativity, they might ask a behavioral question like that gets to, tell me about your creativity, or the time you thought outside of the box and what did that look like? Or tell me about a time when you had to persuade someone of your ideas. So that could be in government or politics, working on certain campaigns. They might ask you a little bit about that. So when answering a behavioral question, we like to talk through the STAR approach when answering questions, which is thinking about what was the situation that you were in. So let's go with tell me about a time when you worked in a team and things didn't go as planned. Someone might talk about a team situation on an athletics team, part of a soccer team. Someone else, so the situation would be, when I was on the soccer team last spring, here's what happened. Someone else might say, okay, I was working on a team in a lab or a research project with a team. Someone else might say, I was working on a team of servers at a restaurant. So the team situation can be anything. And then the person would talk about the task. What was the team trying to achieve? Then the action. What action did you take as part of the team, both that kind of didn't help? So the question is, tell me about a time when you worked in a team and things did not go as planned. What was your action in terms of why things didn't go as planned? So taking some responsibility. and thinking about what things you did in a positive way to try to get the team to work. And then the result, what was the outcome based on the action you took, or what lessons were learned or skills developed as a result of this challenging team environment. So maybe the situation on your team fell apart because people just didn't show up for the project, and what you learned was that you had to be more organized, or you had to have more buy-in from the beginning. And the next time you work in a team, you want to set expectations earlier or set an agenda earlier. So it's all about what you learned from the team in this challenging environment. So what I would like to do now is break you up into breakout rooms and give each person about 3 or 4 minutes to share with their partner that their answer to a team situation when things didn't go as planned. And I'll keep this slide up and use the STAR framework to try to answer that question. So what did you learn from that situation, or talking about that example, that you might apply towards the future? So how did it go? What did you learn? What do you want to do differently in preparing for this example for a future real interview? Does anyone want to share? So people felt really comfortable answering the behavioral question. Tell me about a time when you worked in a team and things didn't go as planned. You felt like the STAR approach, you were able to kind of smoothly get through it? Yes? Okay, I see some people bobbing their heads saying yes. So that's great. I mean, if you're comfortable talking a little bit about this and having at least one STAR example prepared for any interview you go on, I think that's going to serve you really, really well. Like I said, you can almost prepare for some sort of behavioral question involving a team, but just preparing yourself with asking, what was the situation? What was it? What was my role? What was the result? Because oftentimes in an interview, people will ask, tell me about that. Tell me about a time when you thought outside of the box. And you might say, oh yeah, last semester in my design thinking class, it was super creative. I had some great ideas. I ended up getting an A, and I loved the class. So that's typically what happens. Or tell me about a time when you worked in a team and things didn't go as planned. Oh yeah, last semester I had this big project with 4 other people. The 3 other people never showed up, so we didn't do that great, but we did pass. So I learned, next time I need to be more communicative. Those are too general, right? So you really want to get in there with what you did what was your action on the teams to help people connect, or so that the next time you have to work in a team, that doesn't happen. For the creative example, you really want to go through what your idea was and how you went about thinking outside of the box. What did that look like? What were people's responses to it? So really get in there with all of these things to share with the employer. So the next type of question is the hypothetical situational question. And they typically start with, how would you handle this scenario, ... So for example, how would you handle, in the Lazarus Center, we often will have this be one of our questions for our peer advisors giving resume reviews. In an interview, we'll ask them, how will you handle it if one of your peers or another student disagrees with your suggestion? If you were applying for a restaurant position, someone might say, how will you handle it if a customer is angry with the time it took to deliver their meal? So all these hypothetical situational things might come up, or if you're a teacher, how will you handle it if a student acts out in your classroom? That could be a question for a potential teaching or teacher's assistant position. This is where employers really want to know how you think on your feet. So there's no right or wrong here. It's just being able to say, here's what I've done in the past. Here's what's worked. Here's what I've learned. And typically hypothetical situational questions are asked when these types of things could easily happen if hired working for them. So we can sort of gauge it depending on the employer you are going to be interviewing with. And last but not least, technical interview questions. Technical interview questions test your knowledge of specific areas or job functions. And this might happen in the field of engineering, science, finance, where they might ask you a little bit about your experience with a coding language or data sets and things of that nature. So it's specific to that industry. Some common do's and don'ts for interviews. You don't need to prepare for an unnecessary amount of random interview questions that you may be asked. I know that some of my friends back in the day and students will say, I have an interview coming up, so I Googled interview questions and there's so many, right? It's impossible to know the answer and prep the answer for any number of random interview questions out there, nor do you need to do that. You really just want to lean into reading that specific job description that you're applying for and focus on what they're saying in the job description. So each sentence might say something like, we're looking for someone who can brainstorm in a team environment. Stop at the end of that sentence and turn it into a question. Ask yourself, how have I brainstormed in a team environment in the past? And then walk through the STAR example. What was the situation? What was the task? What was the action and the result of my experience brainstorming in a team? That next job description might say, looking for someone who can multitask under time pressure. Turn that into a question. Okay, do I have to multitask as a student under deadline pressure or timeline pressure? You have to do that all the time, right? But it's not enough just to say, oh yeah, I have to do that. I do that all the time. You want to give the situation, task, action, result, and some concrete examples. So really look at the job description, go line by line, and turn in all their sentences into a question that you can ask yourself to prep some of those examples that you want to share with the employer. So some last tips are to research the organization and industry in advance. And a lot of times that could simply mean looking at their website and looking at some of their new initiatives, looking at some of their competitors and products and services, just to kind of get in the know and know their lingo. Like I said, looking at the job description so you can start preparing some of your examples that you want to share with them, reflecting on your past experiences and what those most specific relevant examples are that you want to share in a limited period of time with the employer. We have one-on-one mock interviews where you can practice with a career advisor the answers to these. We also have a great resource through our Handshake platform, and it's called Interview Stream. So you log into Handshake and you go under Career Resources and you click on Interview Stream, and you can have the system, actually a person comes on the screen and asks you random interview questions. You're recorded answering them and you can play back your answer. So it's really cool. It's very humbling. I know we're all sort of our worst critics. So after watching yourself answer any number of interview questions, and you can choose from the questions, by the way, we can really course correct on our own because we see where we need to add a little bit more content or less. You're going to prepare thoughtful questions for the interviewer. And of course, wearing an appropriate outfit and smiling, that nonverbal cues, as we talked about in the beginning, are super important. Oh, so yes, questions for the interview. What kind of questions should I ask? And those are all very specific to you and what's important to you. You might want to know more about the day-to-day, what happens on a day-to-day basis. And a question could come down to, do people eat lunch together? Or are there diversity initiatives? Or what is the onboarding or training process for this position? They really run the gamut. It's really what would be helpful for you to know more about to influence the decision if you want to work for this team and for this organization. And these questions all could get to the culture of the role, the organization, etc.
So this came up in yesterday's workshop, but the idea of a weakness might be your lack of experience, lack of, real working job experience, because you're going out for your, maybe first internship or your first job. And so highlighting the fact that, you know that you are new to the world of work, and then asking the employer about professional development and what the orientation and onboarding process is like, demonstrates to them that you recognize this and that you also are taking a proactive approach to wanting to learn.
I had a great question asked to me when a person was interviewing for a company I used to work for. And the question was, I was working in a career development office at another institution, and we were hiring a career advisor. And he asked, what is the reputation of your office on campus now versus what you want it to be? I just thought that was such a great question. And that was, just an interesting, genuine question that got to learning a little bit more about our office and that our center on that campus, and also kind of the culture of the office and what team he was going to be involved in. So I thought that was interesting. So at the end of your interview, a lot of people will be just so happy to know that that's the end. And I asked my questions, they asked their questions. Now I can hopefully just get out of here or end the Zoom call. But you really want to take a minute, thank them for their time. And if you're interested in the role, if you really enjoyed hearing about this internship or job, let them know, vocalize it. Say to them, wow, I really enjoyed hearing a little bit more about the position, hearing a little bit about the team. And I have to say, I'm really excited about this opportunity. You're absolutely my first choice in terms of employment for this summer or for my first full-time position. If there's anything else I can let you know about my background to support my candidacy for this role, please let me know. I can't wait to hear from you. So something along those lines where you're thanking them and you're genuinely saying, I want this position. And then after, you're not done when you hang up the phone or log off of the Zoom call or walk out of the office. You are going to send a strategic email thank you note within 24 hours, we really suggest, stating, anything that you really enjoyed hearing about in the interview. And you can also be strategic. We use the word strategic because if there was something that you really forgot to mention that you think would be really helpful for them to know, you can put it in the thank you note and let them know that, in addition to some of the experience I talked to you about yesterday or this morning in the interview, I wanted to let you know I'm currently enrolled in this data science course. And what I'm learning in this course, I think will be great added value to your team. Or for me, I remember I was in an interview and one of the questions they asked me randomly, which I couldn't have prepared for, which was, what book are you reading now? And I remembered the name of the book, but they said, oh, and who wrote that? And I could not remember for the life of me the author. And it was just, in the thank you note, I was able to say the name of the book and the author and link it. So it was just respectful for me to follow up saying, oh yes, I remember that I couldn't answer this question and I'm going to answer it now. And then reflect on what worked well during this interview. What were you really proud of yourself for, so that you can remind yourself to do that again. And then what challenged you, or were there challenging questions, and write those down, because oftentimes these can be great questions to practice for future interviews. We have some great resources on the Lazarus Center website and YouTube page. Like I mentioned, the interviewing, short interviewing videos to the tell me about yourself question and behavioral interviews. We have the interview stream through Handshake, and practice interviews with career advisors that you can sign up for in Handshake. Interviews are great. They're really, I know they sound scary, but it's really a great just time to talk about your interest and talk about all the hard work and volunteer internships or any of the experience you have. It's a great experience to have.
Patty, there is one question that came into the chat about doing mock tech interviews.
Yes. So for any type of interview, so you can plug yourself into a one-on-one career advising appointment. Actually, the type you can choose from when you go in to schedule an advising appointment is mock interview. And then we'd encourage you to send the advisor in advance, maybe a day in advance, your resume and a job description. And we can do a practice interview for you. And the tech interviews, I know that, and Kate, maybe you could speak more of this, we're having a lot of employers such as Google and others do virtual events a lot this month. So definitely go into Handshake and look under the events tab, and employers are doing events all the time this semester around tech interviews and other types of interviews. Would you agree, Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely check in Handshake events list, but we do have a tech fair actually coming up later this month. And so we've been engaging a lot of employers. They're going to be doing info sessions, and a bunch of them are coming to the tech fair. So this is a great opportunity to get in front of, in a one-on-one situation, some really top employers.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining. You know where to find us, and have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Happy interviewing, everybody.